Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm back. Trying to get right real quick, though. Probably gonna be a quick stream, though. I got some other shit I gotta do. But, I just wanted to come in and test everything out real quick. See how everything works.
Face of heaven and earth. Trying to cook up. Damn. Too big. There we go. Damn. Okay. Who was that? Paul George? Yeesh. Hey. It's funny. I played the homie this week. He thought he was good at 2K. I told him, man, I never lose. I don't know if he thought I was joking or what, but I'm playing against the computer right now, but you know, I still don't lose against the computer. Damn. Westbrook. Why is Paul George trying to guard me so well? The Clippers, the new look Clippers. Right when I was happy about the new look. Alright. Let's see if I can get that. Dang. Should have made it though. Look good. Alright, about to get that pass. Let me get it. Come on, bro. What you doing? Hey! Took it to the rim strong. Throw it up then. Oh, this the finals?
I didn't know it was the finals. I would have got on yesterday then. Sheesh. My guy.
Religions have always emphasized the importance of acceptances. In the older theological systems, the will of God was regarded as final authority. Man could not go against this, and although he might sometimes rebel inwardly against the conditions that arose in his life, he could only accept whatever heaven sent. The Chinese had their own adage bearing upon this, that heaven bestows and man receives. What man receives, he must take.
I gotta run it back. He cooking. Let him cook.
Religions have always emphasized the importance of acceptances. In the older theological systems, the will of God was regarded as final authority. Man could not go against this, and although he might sometimes rebel inwardly against the conditions that arose in his life, he could only accept whatever heaven sent. The Chinese had their own adage bearing upon this, that heaven bestows and man receives. What man receives, he must take. What heaven wills, he must do. Actually, there is a certain rather valuable psychological principle involved in this concept. We have to recognize that most rebellion is essentially meaningless. It is merely an emotional outburst, an intensity, an anger, a resentment, some form of opposition arising in man, causing him to have a very negative reaction to the things that occur around him. If the individual has been trained from early life to certain disciplines of acceptance, there is no doubt that his worldly affairs will go more pleasantly for him. In the first place, religion has a tendency to blunt rebellion at its very source. The person finds no advantage in attempting to resist the will of heaven, whatever this may demand. He has also been brought up in a code, and this code has imposed certain disciplines upon his own attitudes. If he is devout, he has been trained not to hate. If he is sincere, he has been indoctrinated with certain standards of honesty. If he considers himself an upright citizen in the face of heaven and earth, he maintains his honor, protecting it to the very best of his ability. Thus, he has a tendency to defend himself against temptation, even as the temptation itself arises. He does not wait until it has taken a firm hold upon him. I know I have talked to a great many very devout individuals. Some of them perhaps were a little narrow-minded, a little bigoted, but one quality was rather clearly indicated. What their credo taught, they obeyed. If their doctrine told them that they should not cheat, they did not cheat. Nor did they have a great struggle with themselves to decide where the advantage of dishonesty might lie. They did not allow a long pattern of negative factors to take hold of them, to gradually indoctrinate the individual with arrogance or sophistication or open antagonism. I know that in the old days, when life was not as pleasant perhaps as it is now, many individuals guided their entire span of earthly life by a code, by a simple belief. They held to this as firmly as they could. They made mistakes, that is obvious. But all in all, they did save themselves a tremendous amount of misery. I know in the community where I lived, one rather kindly, placid-faced old lady was more or less a tradition even while she was alive. Her face was without any of the marks of tension which we observe so often now. She was regarded as a good woman. Good because she had a simple code and a simple creed, and she lived it. Her code taught her to be charitable, so she shared her goods with others. Her code taught her to be humble, so she carefully avoided the pitfalls of pride. Her code told her to live simply, and she followed it to the letter. She refrained from many luxuries that others enjoyed because her creed did not approve of luxuries. And when difficulties arose, she retired quietly into prayer, asking for strength and understanding and insight. And then whatever happened was the will of God. And she accepted it, with tears sometimes, but with a deep inner belief that what happened was right. Now it is obvious that this type of defense mechanism, if you want to call it that, does have a tendency to simplify and direct living. In Eastern philosophy, in Buddhism for example, Buddha himself made a strong point of the importance of watching the pressures that arise within us. At the first sign of some undesirable characteristic, we must transmute this. We must never allow small evils to grow up and become great evils. We must never allow a tendency to finally take such hold upon us that we can no longer control it. So in the Buddhist doctrine, the movement, an attitude that was inconsistent with true value arose within the mind or emotion.
Right.
It was the duty of the person to quietly but firmly reject this attitude. Build nothing upon it. Allow it no place in his life, and turn from it, even while the first pressures were forming within himself. By this constant vigilance, the person never permitted himself to become habit-ridden. He never allowed antagonisms or hatreds or jealousies to go on until they possessed him. So we have the question that the Buddhists of old asked, who am I? And the old answer to this was, I am simply the sum of my own pressures. I am the consequence of a dominant attitude that has taken hold of me. And this attitude has gradually become the administrator. It has come to use all subservient attitudes to attain its own purposes, so that actually the person is a psychic drive demanding the fulfillment of its own objectives. As this drive becomes more and more powerful and intense, the individual becomes increasingly reckless. As the drive becomes an obsession, he is willing to sacrifice the good of others, the happiness of his family, and the well-being of his own nature, simply to fulfill this drive. Some objective has become an obsession, and under this obsession, the quietudes, the acceptances are left behind, ignored, until at last the person becomes so set in his false opinions that even the most skillful therapist may have great difficulty in relieving him of the burden of attitudes which have gradually taken over all of his thinking and living. Against this, of course, must come the less strenuous, the less personal, the less egocentric qualities which we associate with acceptances. Let us look around us a little bit in life as we see it now to find out what is the difference between an acceptance and a negative attitude. To assume that everything is as we would like it to be would be a very negative attitude. To accept everything as it is, as fully right or complete or acceptable finally, might also be a rather unfortunate conclusion. But to accept the thing as we find it now, as the proper state in the unfoldment of something better, to recognize this transitoriness of the condition as it is, to realize that what we now face is the consequence of right destiny. It is what we have earned. We are in the condition we have earned for ourselves. We are faced by the problems we have not solved, and we are sustained by the wisdom that we have accumulated out of the past and out of previous lessons that have been learned. Consequently, acceptance begins by acknowledging that every challenge is a lesson, and every lesson is a challenge to insight. That the true solution lies in the skillful use of insight. That we must solve these issues and matters within our own natures before they have a time or condition or opportunity to pass out of our control.
Dang.
If therefore we find temper arising, we also know, if we are thoughtful persons, that we can control that temper. Another point to bear in mind is that everyone, unless he be feeble-minded, is perfectly aware of the basic principles of right and wrong.
Hey.
This dazed excuse that we do not know is at best applicable only to the most complicated situations. The individual who has been raised in any kind of an orderly atmosphere, who has any principles within himself, who has any faith in values whatsoever, and even though he be a materialist, has any consideration for the public good, will know that temper will gain nothing of value.
Dang. That's all.
The individual using temperament in an emergency is simply exhausting his own resources. Every explosion of disposition is an enervating thing. Now, modern psychologists take the ground that we need to get rid of these pressures. That therefore, when we feel like exploding, we had better explode. There is very little real common sense in this attitude. And to try to treat with psychotherapy the perpetual exploder is an almost useless task. Actually, we can liken the pressure of temperament to the pressure of steam in a boiler. Certainly, there is a safety valve on this boiler. And we can, under certain conditions, open this valve and let off steam. We then close the valve, go back to some other occupation, and a little later we must come back, open the valve again, and let off more steam. The reason being that all the time steam is being generated by the fire under the boiler. If you want to prevent this steam pressure from rising beyond a reasonable degree, you've got to lower the fire under the boiler. You have nothing to gain by constantly letting off steam and then creating more. The idea that we will finally get rid of all the steam and settle down to be quiet people is more or less ridiculous. The only reason we do not realize how foolish this attitude is, that somewhere along the individual drops dead letting off steam, so we never know what he might have done had he exhausted all of it. It exhausts him first. It is obvious then that the attitude of acceptances is reducing the pressure behind the personality. Therefore, the personality will not build up pressure. It will not build up this steam which must be constantly released by some artificial procedure. If we do not build up tension, we will not need to take sedation to control tension. We will not find it necessary to block intensities by various bromides if we do not create the tension. All tensions have a destructive effect finally upon some part of our compound natures. They damage structure. They impair function. They establish the bases for physical and nervous and emotional ailments. They make us sick, slowly but surely. Now some insist that this is true, but only to the degree where these tensions and pressures are, we will say, not justified. We always like to hold the attitude that we have the right to be righteously indignant. And there are certainly cases where an individual has a tremendous provocation for being angry. There is no doubt that when we have been bitterly imposed upon, deceived, or injured, where it is obvious that others have victimized us knowingly and intentionally, we look rather helplessly about and say, are we supposed to take this? Are we supposed to be happy, lovable creatures in the presence of very serious wrongs that have been done to us? Is it not perfectly justifiable for us to finally turn and injure the person who has injured us? It is only justice. He has had his day, and now it is our turn to have ours. He has hurt us without consideration. Why should we consider him? He has cheated us. Why should we not cheat him? And with situations as they are, why not cheat him before he has a chance to cheat us? Always assuming that in this particular kind of life that we know, the rule is to impose upon the other person first. Actually, nature recognizes no difference between righteous and unrighteous indignation, inasmuch as it recognizes no difference between processes or situations or trends which are essentially the same in principle and are only subject to different interpretations. Our blood pressure is not any improved because our indignation is righteous.
Right.
The damage we do to ourselves is not less because we justify it. Whenever we permit our emotions or our attitudes to become destructive, we are hurting ourselves regardless of the motivations.
Right.
This is undoubtedly one of the reasons why we find the strong emphasis in the New Testament on the problem of forgiving the adversary. If we do good to those who do good to us, what merit or credit have we? For so do the scribes and Pharisees. If we therefore are injured and turn about and injure the person who hurt us, we have only joined our natures with those of millions of other ignorant people. who are not aware that their course of procedure is going to lead to further misery for themselves. In the law of causality, the evil that has been done by another returns to him. The evil that we do returns to us. And if we do an evil in a way of spiting him, this evil that we do is still our own. We have set in motion a cause of further suffering for ourselves, regardless of the provocation. The provocation does not change the reaction of the situation. Nature does not wish anyone to injure anything. And no amount of injury by one justifies injury by another. It is obvious that this is a very difficult policy to maintain. It seems that almost instinctively we rise against an injury. We believe subconsciously in the old idea of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And when someone hits us, we want to strike back. And because we have been hit, and because we have struck back, and this has been the policy of mankind since the beginning of history, this is the reason why we have nuclear fission today.
Right.
Because there is no end to this process of avengement and revengement. And today we are hearing people talking of ills done 300 years ago that must be righted, of mistakes that were made 500 years ago that must be paid for, and wrong notions that have been carried since the dawn of society, which must bring their harvest of immediate pain and suffering. So wherever we are, whatever the principle may be, the only possible answer to any injury that is done us is to take an attitude of some kind that causes no further injury to anything or to anyone. Otherwise, injuries will pyramid, and what may start as a small disagreement ends in a lifetime feud. And even this may not exhaust it, for feuds will go down in families from 3 to 5 generations, because no one has had the courage or the wisdom to break the tragic chain of circumstances. This is contrary to human nature, we can say, that it is almost more than we can ask of a person to graciously and quietly accept injury. Yet this is the only way we can outwit the cycle of causality. This further brings to mind another very solid philosophic principle. When injured, instead of turning against the other person, turn into ourselves and ask the question, why? Instead of assuming that the injury is completely the responsibility of the person who perhaps became its principal catalyzing agent, let us see just how and why this injury came about. One of the most common causes of injury is some injustice of our own, which has awakened a negative reaction in someone else. The individual who by nature is just, who by consciousness is kind, and who by thought is intelligent, and who by emotion is constructive. Such an individual is not nearly so likely to be injured. First, he does not open himself to injury. He is not thoughtless or careless, nor does he set up causes in himself which others will naturally resent. Nearly always, injuries arise from a mutual situation of some kind.
again?
In the defense of our own attitudes, we are disrespectful or inconsiderate of other people, and they turn on us.
Oh.
Perhaps one reason that we are proverbially injured is because we have lowered our defenses in the hope that we would injure someone else first. This takes us back to principles of Western boxing and Eastern judo. Whenever we are off balance, whenever we are reaching out to impose upon someone else, we are vulnerable. This other person can, so to say, beat us to the punch. And this happens a great many times. If we are trying to make an unreasonable profit, we will stand to take an unreasonable loss. If we are selfish, indifferent to the rights of others, we open ourselves to their antagonisms. And wherever we get into trouble, wherever we are the victim of something, to what degree have we contributed to the delinquencies of the other persons? This can be a very sobering line of research, and can frequently prove to us that either through carelessness or indifference or selfishness or egotism or simple blindness, we have laid the foundation for the trouble that has come to us. Thus, it is not usually true that a noble, wonderful, thoughtless person is bitterly used. It is nearly always true that we are contributing in varying degrees, all of us, to a pattern of discomforts, a pattern of misunderstandings. I know we have had a good many cases recently of interreligious marriages that have pointed out some of these problems. Young soldier stationed in a foreign country has come home with a foreign bride. His family is terribly upset. They have never stopped to consider that the fair thing to do would be to wait and see what kind of a person their son has married. But because this girl happened to come from the Balkans, or from the Near East or the Far East, no other consideration prevailed. It was simply a matter of extraordinary prejudice. When the girl arrived, she may have been also under a great deal of tension. She had subconsciously perhaps some realization that she might not be accepted. Perhaps her husband has pointed out this danger to her. She comes not at her best, but inclined to be reticent and defensive. This is immediately misinterpreted by persons who wanted to misinterpret it. They are just as reticent as she is, but their reticence is a noble doubt. Hers an unreasonable one. So these persons come together with a built-in danger of further trouble. Everything that happens will be interpreted in the worst possible way, because the parents have only one basic motive. They want to break up the marriage. Now these parents will be very indignant and very hurt if, for instance, the young wife turns on them someday and gives them a piece of her mind. To them, their motives are above question. Their ideals cannot be doubted. They are only trying to save their boy from a terrible catastrophe, according to their thinking. But in reality, as some cases have proven, they are leading their boy into the greatest tragedy of his life. So the parents would not allow for a moment that their indignation was unrighteous. They were very righteous. They knew best. They were right about everything. They were right except they were never for one moment honest. They were right except they condemned without hearing. They were right because underneath all of their thinking was a conspiracy which was not right. and which had a wrong motive, perhaps without realization that it was wrong, but nevertheless a very cruel and destructive one. When people with this kind of subjective patterning are hurt, they are very terribly upset about it. They just cannot think things through to realize their own part in the pattern. So wherever we find ourselves suddenly the victims of what appear to be evil intentions of other people, we must give a little question as to what our own motives actually were. Sometimes these motives are perfectly acceptable socially. They are the motives that our ancestors used. They are the motives that our associates are addicted to. But these motives may still be extremely wrong as far as universal principles may be concerned. The only real answer, for instance, to this problem of the foreign marriage that I referred to is another example which occurred in Texas, which I happened to be very close to and saw it work out. The young son came back with a foreign bride of a very foreign background. The family was a little dismayed. They had been forewarned. They didn't know exactly what to do about it. But they sat down and they made a simple decision. We're going to wait. We're going to come to no attitude until we find out what kind of a person our boy married. If he has married a fine person, we're going to accept her. And we're going to accept her without question. If she has the power to make him happy, we're for her. Well, again, the young lady appeared with reservations, but with a great deal of innate charm and grace and insight and maturity, and a few months was the most beloved member of the family. They had waited for the facts. The facts justified an acceptance rather than a rejection. But if they had made up their minds beforehand or trusted to their gossiping neighbors for a decision, it would have been a very bad situation. So many situations that seem to get pretty difficult must not be blamed upon the other person totally. We are all to blame, unless we all use the deepest integrities that we possess. Now, if you had asked any of these gossiping neighbors what their motives were, they would have tried their best to justify themselves. All they wanted to do was be helpful. Really, they did not want to be helpful. They knew just as well as anyone else can know that gossiping isn't good. But against the fact that what they were doing was wrong, there was a certain satisfaction that they were exercising an influence, that they were forcing a situation, that they were throwing weight around in some way, that they were becoming important because they were helping to advance a negative conspiracy. These people, any one of them, under a polygraph, lie detector, would have admitted that they were wrong. But under ordinary analysis, they would not admit it. They knew, in principle, they were wrong. But in this particular case, their action was justified. So we have to begin to think through in nature that principles are either always true or they are not true at all. Principles that can be adapted to our moods have not much strength in them. Principles that can be twisted and turned according to denominational beliefs. Principles that apply to one race and not to another. Principles that apply to one level of society and not to another. These are not principles at all. They are merely prejudices and conceits and bigotries. For we live in a universe in which there are certain things that are right and certain things that are wrong. We find out what is right, not by recourse to the words of the wise or to ancient scriptures. We find out what is right in terms of what hurts and what does not hurt. Wherever we get ourselves on the wrong side of a situation, we begin to suffer. And we continue to suffer until we correct ourselves. Now, this suffering is sometimes protracted. It does not immediately appear. Sometimes it extends as a nagging situation over a period of years. But the person who breaks the rule has to live with the punishment that is inevitable. So philosophy has developed around what we might call a doctrine of experience. That which has never worked probably never will. That which has hurt everyone else will hurt us. That which no one else has ever succeeded in doing well, as far as temperamental problems are concerned, will be difficult for us to do well. But we also realize that out of experience, man has created a code that was first unwritten and finally was recorded for the benefit of ages to come. This code is nothing but the record of the results of long living. The results of cause and effect recorded in the lives of living things. These laws are unchanging. Man must adapt to them. They will never compromise themselves for his sake. Today we are living in a civilization, so-called or alleged, which is a confirmed lawbreaker. A civilization which seems to exist primarily to try to disprove law. A civilization that makes the attitudes or whims of the individual utterly dominant. We are expected to believe that man can live as he pleases, regardless of the level of insight upon which he functions, and that no consequence will come to him that is adverse to his own desires. We cannot prove this. We talk about religious superstitions, that it is very difficult to prove the existence of the devil, that it is very difficult to localize the true place in the universe occupied by heaven, that it is also very hard to justify some of the abstractions of theology. Therefore, what we cannot prove, we have a right to reject. But on the side of experience, where things work out, our attitude is, what we have proved, we have a right to reject. We have proved for ages that war will never produce peace. Yet this proof is to be rejected. The individual that believes the good man may go to heaven is superstitious. But the individual who believes that he can win a war and gain security and power for himself and his descendants by autocracy or dictatorship, this individual has a right to affirm that he is realistic, although he cannot prove anywhere, any time in history, where his kind have not come to a bad end. So nature has bestowed upon us, as many Eastern philosophers particularly have pointed out, an absolute measuring rod. A measuring rod to determine the effects of conduct, and that we should be forever mindful of the evidence that accumulates, that this evidence cannot be gainsaid. It cannot be denied, contradicted, or disproven. It can only be hopefully ignored. Evidence tells us that if we want to be reasonable, if we want to think straight, if we want to plan intelligently, if we really have some desire for happiness, for security in life, for genuine friendship, for true and honest affection, if any of these are meaningful in any way, we must live in a manner that will make them possible. And if we do not live in this way, we will not have them, nor can any amount of bribery or chicanery attain them for us. No amount of rejection intellectually of that which is true, or the effort to build up and prove that which is not true, will have any effect whatsoever upon facts. We live in a universe of facts. If we abide by them, they will give us the results that we are entitled to. There is just no way of changing this pattern. And the simplest thing is to change ourselves into harmony with it. We all know that hasty judgment is apt to be bad. We all know that carelessness increases industrial accidents. We also realize that persons who are over-fatigued and drive a car are apt to have accidents. Furthermore, that an individual who has taken too much alcohol and gone out and driven a car is apt to kill himself and other people. He may insist on his right to drink, but whether he is right or wrong in his determination, he is still a menace to himself and others. His own attitudes on the matter have no bearing upon the reality. The reality is how much alcohol is there in his system. And if it is there, it is there. And no amount of platitude can change it. Everywhere, these facts have to be taken into consideration. Most people who make wrong decisions do so because they lack inner integration. Man has to possess a certain intuitive power in order to make successful judgments. This does not mean that he has to have some kind of metaphysical abilities, but it simply means that he must be able to use his faculties as nature intended him to. That he must have these faculties trained to a reasonable degree of efficiency. And that in all emergencies, his wisest course is to make full use of all of the available resources of his mental, emotional, and physical natures. A crisis simply is a demand upon everything that we are to meet the emergency that we face. To meet an emergency with everything that is the best of ourselves, we have to meet it with an extraordinary quietude. We see nature stepping in and setting this pattern in motion. I have gone through a number of tragic circumstances with other people, and nearly always as an emergency becomes more critical, the natural tendency of the normal person is to become quiet. Over small matters we may become hysterical, but in the presence of a great circumstance in life, a great tragedy, a great mystery confronting us in life, almost always we become quiet. We become quiet because we instinctively have need of the most of our own nature that we can bring to bear upon this circumstance. We need clarity. We need depth. We need to use thought for solution, for comfort, for consolation, for inspiration, for acceptance. And nature tries to make this thought available to us. Nature also, under normal conditions, builds up a tremendous reserve of quietude for persons carrying a very heavy load. Very often we are able and sufficient to tremendous emergencies. It is after the emergency passes or after the situation is terminated, that we may frequently come into a critical emotional condition.
Hey, we're gonna chill on that for a second. I got another video I wanna watch real quick. Let me see what that shit do. Hold on, let me change this shit. Yeah. Hold on, let me, I'll be right back. Give me a second. Let me get this shit started.
When it comes to dating and relationships, what is the friend zone?
I feel like that is keeping a man at arm's distance, because me personally, I want him as a friend because I like his energy, but I don't want to have sex with him and then ruin it.
You don't see him in a romantic sense, and perhaps he wants something more and he's signaling that to you, but like you're not on the same wavelength, so you kind of have to distance yourself or let him down easy, or just tell him like, yikes, like.
You're going to be necessarily there for her emotional support. Pretty much everything a boyfriend does but the sex and the affection. She wants the affection, but not necessarily physically.
Have either of you ever been friend zoned by a guy, and if so, how'd that make you feel?
A couple times when I was younger, made me feel pretty bad. Yeah, pretty insecure.
I was actually friend zoned by my boyfriend, but we're now dating.
I don't know if I've been friend zoned, but I feel like sometimes it's hard to tell if they're flirting with you or just like trying to be friends. And we actually were just talking about this. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like if a guy is not like flirting with you directly, then they're just trying to be friends.
Do you think men and women can be just friends?
No.
I do. I think you can just be friends. Well, no, I do. I really do.
If you asked your best straight single guy friend if he'd date you or hook up, what do you think he would say?
I mean, in my experience, yes, yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Say yes.
So then you can't be friends?
Okay, I think girls can be friends with guys, but I don't think guys can just be friends with girls.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So is it true that women tend to set the boundaries of a relationship, whether you're going to be friends or more than friends?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Do you have more girlfriends or guy friends, and do you think that says something about you?
I feel like I have more guy friends. I think that does like say a little bit about me. Just girls, sometimes they're not as reliable.
Do you think men and women can be just friends?
Absolutely.
If you asked your best straight single guy friend if he'd date you or hook up, what do you think he would say?
No, he would be like, ew.
Well, I feel like yes, if you're not attracted to them. Like I have a lot of guy friends, but I'm not attracted to any of them. I don't think I could be like super great friends with someone that I'm super attracted to.
So is it true that women tend to set the boundaries of a relationship, whether you're going to be friends or more than friends?
Yeah, definitely, but I think it can change over time.
How can a guy make an interaction man to woman without being creepy, while also respecting her without being friend zoned?
Don't immediately comment on her appearance. Maybe compliment her on something she's interested in, or like a joke she tells, or like an interest she has. Like, don't make it about the way she looks.
Why does a guy have to be coached on how to pick up women, but he doesn't have to be coached on how to make friends?
Because parents don't raise their children right, and a lot of men lack social skills.
Some men do. Some men do. Mainly because probably you don't have a lot of female friends in your life, or like female relatives that you're around. But picking up friends is easy. I think that some guys put a mental barrier in their mind and think that with a woman, especially if she's attractive, that you have to be a certain different kind of way. And that's not necessarily true. I think that the more attractive a woman is, the more normal she likes to be treated with. It's like dealing with celebrities. You meet a celebrity, they like to be treated normally for the most part, instead of being like, oh, infatuated with, oh, I know who you are.
I think that if you need to be coached on how to pick up women, then you need to like practice self-love and kind of find that first, because that's just going to come along with it. And I think that like if you're not being your true genuine self when you're trying to pick up the women, it's going to show later on when you finally get them.
Why are there gender roles in dating but not in friendship?
I don't think that's true. I think there are gender roles in friendships.
Can you be more specific? What do you mean?
When I go out with my guy friends, even if it's just like to dinner or like to grab a drink in a large group, like the guys will normally pay, whereas like the girls won't. They'll kind of like expect their guy friends to pay even if they're not romantically involved or anything like that.
Why should a man have relationship duties without getting relationship benefits?
I don't think that a man should ever have relationship duties and have no relationship benefits. I mean, unless you want that kind of torture.
Does a guy being friend zoned automatically make him a simp?
I'm not sure what a simp means. Like a simple person?
A simp is somebody who pedestalizes women without getting anything in return.
I don't think that a guy getting put in the friend zone makes him a simp. Just simply because being friend zoned is on the woman's part. Being a simp is on the man's part. You shouldn't idolize anybody. You should be able to handle yourself. It's about self-confidence.
What does a man get out of a friendship with a woman that's better than a romantic relationship?
A great wingman.
Human connection without like sexual tension, without the underlying expectation of marriage and stuff.
Why should a man have relationship duties without getting relationship benefits?
Because the man is supposed to be the provider.
Does a guy being friend zoned automatically make him a simp?
Yes.
How so?
Because most men who are actually intrigued in that woman would go for that woman. And instantly when they get friend zoned, they're okay with being friend zoned. And they're willing to take that rejection.
What's the difference between a guy spinning plates and pursuing multiple women versus a woman having orbiters and multiple suitors?
The only difference between a man having a lot of women they mess with and a girl having a lot of dudes around them, it's just society. It's just the way society's been built. You know, they want women to be one kind of way and men can play around. We have a lot more leeway and it's messed up and it is what it is. You can complain about it, but that's just life.
Isn't that both genders pursuing their sexual strategy to have multiple options?
Yes, it is. It is both genders being put to different standards. And it just depends on the culture you're in.
Why do women friend zone guys who would make them wives for guys who made them single moms?
I feel like sometimes it's really like the guys that'll make you a wife. Women, they don't want to like change who they are. So they say they want to be a wife, but they're not ready to really play the wife role or whatever. So I feel like that's really what it would be.
I feel like some women know what they want with the wrong men. If that makes sense, because a lot of y'all want babies, cars, houses, with the guy that just doesn't want that. Like, if he says no, it's no.
When you first meet a guy, how do you decide if he's going to be a friend or more than a friend? And more importantly, when do you decide? Because it's often said a woman will know right away.
Ooh. Typically you do know right away, but I think it just depends on like the chemistry that's there. I don't, if it's sexual chemistry or not. Like,
I think women know immediately who they will and not have sex with. I can't go into women's heads.
Right.
Well, honestly, within the first few seconds of speaking to a guy, I kind of know and like realize if he's a liar or if he's like really interested.
But I also believe it's by age. If you're talking about teenage women as opposed to girls in their 20s, I'm in my 40s. Women in their 40s that went through some life, so they're very different. They will know exactly by who you are as a person, as opposed to when you're in your 20s, it's all about how hot you are, what kind of money you have, what kind of car you drive, what kind of friends you do. I don't have time for that.
What's the difference between a guy who grows on you to become a friend versus a guy who grows on you to become a lover?
Okay, a guy that grows on me to become a friend, I feel like it's just like has really great qualities, but maybe not so much like, that sounds so shallow, but like physical attributes. I don't know. Like,
sometimes you're not physically attracted to them. Like, and it goes both ways. Like, you can
be not physically attracted but still have a good friendship.
Like, it doesn't mean that they're not attractive. It just means it's like not what I'm attracted to. I have a lot of guy friends that I think are like super attractive, but just not for me.
Why should your lover be your best friend, but your best friend shouldn't necessarily be your lover?
Sometimes lovers become friends, and then sometimes friends become lovers.
Is there anything you would do with your lover that you can't do with your best friend?
No. Sex. Marriage.
Is there anything you would do with your best friend that you wouldn't do with your lover?
No.
So why do people often say that your lover should be your best friend?
Because I feel like, so things could be easy and it feels like you're with your friend and it's not just, I don't know, an agreement.
You don't want to get in that roommate status.
Yes, that's a good point.
If your lover should be your best friend, why do women typically have a gay best friend?
Fashion advice.
Exactly. And
They have a bodyguard that's not going to want to f them.
If someone's dating a bisexual, are they more likely to get jealous whenever their lover spends time with their friends?
I don't think so.
How can the friend zone and friends with benefits be terms that coexist? Isn't that a contradiction?
Wow, that's a deep question. Okay, damn. All right.
The friend zone is such a deep concept. You can be friends with someone of the opposite sex and not be in the friend zone.
Women putting you in the friend zone, they could actually just want to be your drinking buddy and chill out and party. And they could also just want you to you could be a friend zone and be two ways. You could be a buddy and you could also be just like you're being used and abused. But being a buddy, she's just using you as a dildo, a walking dildo.
If they both exist, what does it mean to be friends?
I think to be friends is that no matter what, ups and downs, left and rights, no matter who you're dating, no matter what happens in your life, you can come back to me and I still got your back. Being in the friend zone, but you are romantically attached to her, you're in a big problem. Yeah.
Is there anything you would do with your lover that you can't do with your best friend?
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to sleep with them. There's certain conversations about your life that you have with a lover that you don't have with a best friend.
One of the things that I would never do with my lover that I can't do with my female friends is necessarily just chill, go out, drink, party, and not worry about if I didn't pick up the tab or I didn't put on a chair or am I wearing the wrong clothes. All that pressure of having to be quasi-perfect.
How about being honest and emotional?
I could be always honest with my female friends. Now, honesty sometimes can be like a bad thing with a lover because they might not want to hear the truth. How do I look today? You can always gotta be nice. With my friends, I think your hair's fucked up.
It's a lot of things my best friend for sure know about me that my lover would never.
Yeah, I feel like your lover will be quick to judge you and tell you no, but your best friend will tell you and judge you, but they'll still accept it. You know?
So why do people often say that your lover should be your best friend?
My boyfriend is my best friend. He's awesome, but I've also got super close guy friends, and I love them too, just in a different way.
Why should your lover be your best friend, but your best friend shouldn't necessarily be your lover?
I think there's many ways to define best friend, and you could have several different best friends that serve several different purposes.
Multiple best friends that serve different purposes in your life. Having a girl best friend or a gay best friend does something different than having your boyfriend as your best friend.
In a perfect world, your lover will be your best friend, right? In the perfect world, and that should be called marriage. Your best friend should not be your lover at all because you want to keep her forever. Sometimes that sex goes away, but your friend will always be there no matter what.
Can you define asexual?
Asexual?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
Not attracted to any gender, I think.
Not attracted to anything?
Yeah.
Do asexual people experience romantic love, and if so, how do they express it?
I think so. I think asexual people can show romantic love in other forms of love. You talk about acts of service, gift giving, not love. Love isn't always sex.
If you're asexual and you're in a relationship, how would you know that you're more than just friends?
I think it's the type of love that you feel because there's platonic love and romantic love no matter if you're having sex or not.
I feel like the other person has to show it, and also you have to have that conversation with someone.
There's a deeper connection than sex in relationships.
So would you assume that asexual people are only compatible with other asexuals?
No.
No. I think if anything, they'd be less compatible because they wouldn't be able to truly show each other love.
What does it mean when people say that dating is more than friends?
Dating is more than friends in the sense that I think that dating is a game. The game is you're trying to show your best side of you. With friends, you can just scratch your balls, you can scratch your ass. I mean, I want to say all the way to farting, but I mean, you could be way more comfortable. But in a date, you want everything to be perfect. And so you're always conscious of that, which makes you be different.
If a friend expected you to provide everything, would that be a toxic relationship?
If a friend thought that I had everything to give to them with nothing given back, it is definitely a toxic relationship. And that goes for males and females all throughout.
So why is it considered toxic when friends become users, but it's normal when women expect a man to provide more than just his company?
Well, because in a proper relationship, you're both providing more than company, and it's pretty equal, or you fill in the gaps. It's 80-20 one day and 80-20 the next day, depending on who needs more.
But it's normal when women expect a man to provide more than just his company.
Wow, dude, these questions are dope. Okay, I have no idea about that one, because the truth of the matter is there are some women, and it's not all of them, that they would take advantage of a man's generosity. But if they were just your friend and they're just taking it and they're not giving you anything in return, and I know like this is like a quid pro quo, the truth of the matter is you need to know by yourself what's good and what's not good for you.
Should a man be expected to love a woman for who she is if a woman only loves a man for what he provides?
The answer is no. A woman that only cares about what a man provides is best put in this axiom. Love me at my worst, but don't love me only at my best. Fair weather friends cannot hang out with me.
Dang, you left it at that. All right. Well, shit, let me get a minute. I won the championship, but let me, I'll be right back. Shit. Was like, those are some pretty good questions. Hey, what they thought about?
I promise that
There we go. What's this one sound like? Oh, I get to choose teams. First game with the Warriors. Forgot about that part though. There we go. I can't shoot from out here. What the fuck? Do my phone talking about. Alright, hold on. How about this one? Oh yeah, how about this one? This one? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, what about this one? I want to show this shit a little bit, but I don't know. I know it's gonna be music, so let me turn this shit off real quick.
I have something that will take the mainstream history that we've been force-fed since day one and rip it right in half. So here we go. The photo description states that in the summer of 1903, construction continues inside the entrance to the Palace of Machinery for the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, the 1904 World's Fair. The date of this photo is in 1903. The fair in St. Louis was in 1904. So this would all make perfect sense, except there's a massive flaw. A flaw so big that it's undeniable proof that this building was constructed 100 years before the 1903 date that we are told, and proof that there was a mud flood that ripped through this building at some point after 1803. Where is the foundation of this building? Incredibly detailed construction projects do not take place on top of dirt and garbage. This, in my opinion, is the most incredible photo that I have ever seen to this point. A lie right in our faces, saying that this was being built in 1903, when we have multiple dates of 1803, time-stamped right on the building. multiple times. Not only that, but you can see that the mud flood damaged the bottom of this building here. The mud came after the construction, not before. And I want to make that point very clear. This is a cleanup project, 100%. After this World's Fair, they knocked these buildings down, not because they were pathetic, but because they held dates that do not fit in our mainstream timeline and architecture that we cannot reproduce today. It's incredible. I've been talking to many people, engineers, construction workers, architects, and more about this photo. They are telling me that this is undeniable proof, and at this point, there isn't an excuse in the book that could save the mainstream history. It's time for everyone to wake up to the nonsense that we have all been force-fed to believe. Oh, and we're just getting started today. Welcome to episode 49 of My Lunch Break. I hope you're all having a great day, and if you're new,
Hold on, let me skip all this shit.
deep in the archives. And for the beginning of these photos, I want to focus on the main theme. The theme being that the building is completed, and they are simply putting scaffolding around the buildings. In my opinion, they are painting these buildings white so that they look brand new, when in reality, they are old and from the past civilization. Here we are told is the government building in the Philippine Exposition. We can zoom in on these guys, and of course they're not doing anything productive. You would think that they could build a better ladder compared to what they supposedly built right next to them. And again, let's switch over to this one, where we are told that this is a construction photo when it's clearly completed. The only construction going on here is the scaffolding, again and again. People just standing there looking so odd, and it almost looks like they just have a kid here. I mean, look at the detail on top of the columns. It's unbelievable, and I believe that I was correct when I said that they were just painting these buildings. They are not constructing anything. Now let's look down here at the bottom right-hand side of this photo. It says right here that these are painters and decorators. They are not building anything like the description says for these photos. And they needed a place to live on site because they were painting all of these old world buildings. They were going to be there for a while. The buildings lasted forever. The paint did not. So they needed to get a fresh coat of paint on there. But when you look at the description of the photo, it says that it's a photo during its construction. So they are clearly lying. Painting is not constructing. It's painting. Two different, completely separate jobs. So these are all from the St. Louis World's Fair that we showed in the intro. The dates are from 1803, not 1903. And it had a mud flood that ripped through the interior of these buildings. So let's take a look at this building from St. Louis. And this is founded and renamed the Varied Industries Building. This is another completion photo that they're trying to say is a construction photo. And I want to zoom in on the top of this building. Can you believe the tech that is on the top of this thing? It's incredible. We have shown the airships in episode 48 and how they connected these flying crafts to the top of these buildings and use them as charging docks. And to be clear, I don't think that the past civilization was limited to just these airships that we have photos of. I think that they had much more powerful vehicles. But let's get back to these photos. Skeptics have said these buildings were just made of wood and very easily constructed, and then that's why they knocked them down. No, the only wood that was being used in this project is for the scaffolding to paint the old world buildings white. The lumber is for the scaffolding, not the actual building. Let's make that very clear. If you've ever gone to one of these buildings, the pillars are pure marble. They're not wood. You can use the Field Museum as an example, located in Chicago. And now here we have another incredible construction photo, where for some reason, there isn't much construction going on, just a building with more scaffolding. So my question is, how have they gotten away with this nonsense for so long? That is not construction. I can clearly see that the building is done. Just because someone put a ladder in front of it doesn't mean this is being constructed. This is the process that painters use. Any painter will confirm this. And also imagine carrying these materials up that scaffolding. If this was really a construction photo, it would be impossible and very embarrassing because nobody would be able to do it. Does anyone see a crane anywhere? No. Once you know, you know. You don't go back to believing in the lies because they are ridiculous. We have more tech in the background here. There are two of them actually. And here we have a bunch of people that found this building. Let's take a second and look at the size of this thing. This was the Palace of Electricity. Could you imagine this being constructed today? This thing is unbelievable. And remember, there were so many of these buildings being thrown together in like 2 years supposedly at the same exact time. Oh, And they are all dated 1803, not 1903. And what happened to the Palace of Electricity? We were told that these buildings were practically worthless, and they ended up in dump sites because they were just made of wood, right? The problem with that is that they are contradicting themselves. The Missouri History Museum states that the construction for the Palace of Electricity and Machinery costed them $412,000, which is the equivalent to $11.48 million today in 2023. So it's practically worthless, or is it 11.4 million? This is the kind of stuff that makes me fully trust the mainstream narrative. I love just knowing deep down that they would never lie to us. It's just really nice to know. I love that they provide us with full logistical details. They never contradict themselves. They go that extra mile to make sure that what we are being told is exactly what happened. Oh, they don't do any of that? No. They don't do any of that. Literally none of it. The title states that this is the Iowa State Pavilion construction. And if you just shut your eyes right now, you can clearly see them right there laying the cornerstone. Okay, you can open your eyes now. This is the master builder down here. And those guys up there were also fully trained on how to build massive palaces. In fact, they are admittedly self-trained, getting a lot of their architecture designs and ideas from working on Abe Lincoln's house. As you can see, they were very busy workers. They got that building done in less than 2 years, ready for the world to see. Temporarily, of course, before knocking it down, so that nobody would ever see it again. And we can't forget to mention that they have painters actually painting this building. 4 of them to be exact, proving again that these are not construction photos. They are painting photos. And over on the right-hand side of this photo, we can clearly see a construction process happening, putting the scaffolding together with perfection. Just look at that scaffolding architecture. Okay, I'll be done with the sarcasm for today. The mainstream narrative is so ridiculous. It's really hard to not make fun of it at this point. And then we have more painters. He's got his paintbrush in his hand and the paint right there on the scaffolding. So it's pretty clear at this point that these are no longer allowed to be considered construction photos for anyone that ever had a doubt in their mind. Now he's holding up a hat, and that hat says something on it. I wish I knew what it said. Comment below what you think that hat says. All answers are accepted. The guy next to him is also wearing a top hat, which is, of course, if you're going for the productive painter / I still want my style points look, very common for the 1900s. Very impressive. And here we have the United States Fisheries Building during its completion. But I'm going to zoom in on this building on the right-hand side because it's very strange. And we have these creatures' faces on the side of this building with writing here as well. I can't see exactly what it says, but it definitely doesn't say Fisheries Building. And then we can see more painters up here on the left-hand side. And here we have a modern fisheries building, built by us, of course, which won't last forever, unfortunately, because that's the way we construct things. So here we have a fisheries building that is designed by the Greek gods. And we are told that this is a separation of 100 years, but we are evolving and advancing, when in all honesty, that's the complete opposite. More and more people are realizing that the mainstream history that is written down by some random individual that was never even there and is being told what to write is a joke. Anyone that is seriously backing the regurgitated nonsense at this point and is serious about it should be very careful what they hope and believe in, because I have a lot more on the way that is going to rip their history books apart. So let's switch gears here for part 2. I want to show you all the Grimes County Courthouse, located in Anderson, Texas. And we'll just go right in on their website and can really understand how deep the lie goes and how many times it's happened and how these stories are a code, and in my opinion, written by the AI. And a clear giveaway is the repetition. The courthouse was supposedly designed by Glover and Company and completed in 1894, where it incorporates the east wall and foundations of an earlier courthouse that was, you guessed it, destroyed by a fire. So, we are all aware of what the fire narrative really means at this point. It is a nod to their group that this building is from the old world. There was never a fire here, and this building is the original building. The fires that happen today are real. You can see them. The fires are there to destroy the previous civilization's work. And they are not just fires. In my opinion, they are demolitions. Stone and brick do not burn down from a house fire. And this is common knowledge. The fire story today is to destroy these buildings, collect the insurance check, and there's nobody to blame, conveniently. Now, a fire story from the 1800s is weird because they're trying to fit these incredible buildings into this insane timeline that they're trying to come up with. It's simply a nod, and we know this now. The amount of times that the fire narrative is given to us is alarming. Can you imagine every single house in your neighborhood going up in a fire? No, that's not possible. But nearly every single old world building has a fire story. The probability of that is 0%. So let's stay in Anderson County, Texas, where they have another courthouse that has a backstory that, in my opinion, wouldn't hold up in their own courthouse. Located at One Public Square in Palestine, Anderson County, Texas. This building was built on top of the highest hill in Palestine. And we all know when there is a big hill, that something is most likely under the grass. We've shown this a lot. Episode 45 has an awesome example of this. Of course, we get the weirdest reoccurring names here, which we've shown a lot. How the AI can't come up with different names. It basically takes like 3 names and scrambles them. It's actually bizarre. It's very weird. Episode 43 is my favorite example of this with the Fredericks. But here we get the architects, Charles Henry Page and Louis Charles Page. So we get Charles Page and Louis Charles Page. That's fine, they can be brothers. But we know the reoccurring names at this point and know that this is not an accident. And we know what's really going on here. The mom and dad didn't put Charles as the one kid's name and Charles for the other kid's middle name. It's a clear mix-up by the AI. And then calling them brothers. And to drive this home, if you're on the fence, this is the 4th courthouse on this site. And this one was thrown together by the Charles Page twins in less than a year. Over 110 years ago. From 1913 to 1914. Still trusting the narrative? Or should we go deeper? The first Anderson County Courthouse, a 1-story frame structure, was built in 1847. It was replaced, supposedly, 9 years later. And this type of thing was simple in the 1800s. Building courthouses back then with a horse and a wagon with no power tools was simple stuff. It was very easy. So a 3rd courthouse, also brick, was completed in 1886, only 30 years later. But you guessed it, was, of course, destroyed by a fire in 1913. We're clearly at the point where we are proving time and time again that we have been told a massive lie and that none of the mainstream history is or ever has been telling the truth. Again, using facts and real logistics and common sense, this fire supposedly happened in 1913. This is what they're telling us. And then somehow clean this brick building up, get it out of the way, get all of the new materials to the site, and knock this new courthouse out in less than a year. And it's here forever. This is insane to believe at this point. That isn't even close to a real timeline. And we're not done with Texas today. Let's go over to the Fort Bend County Courthouse and see what they have going on over there. Since, of course, we have these very real twin Charles Page brothers, pinned as the architects of that one too. A brick, classical revival style masterpiece that also stands the test of time. And if you thought that last one was an eye-opener, hold on to your seats, because this is the 5th courthouse in this county, which began in 1837. The structure was designed by these Page twins and all wrapped up in 1909. So from 1908 to 1909, less than a year, they got this thing done. And that's, of course, not the weirdest part, because, of course, there is more. Because we need to figure out why there's been 5 courthouses here in this town. So the 1887 courthouse, one of the 5 that were here prior, had a clock tower, but they removed that shortly after the building was done. Which makes sense if you're trying to hide the past civilization's work. This courthouse stood on Morton Street, where the current town hall sits, and you guessed it again, it burned down in 1930. Did you think that was where I was going to stop? Well, here on TexasCourthouses.com, I found all 5 of these supposed previous courthouses, and I want to know where they all went. Not just one of them. The first one, in 1842, gone. Lost to erosion. Here's the second one. Building completion date, 1871. Present status, gone. Burned down in 1887. So we know that this exact same courthouse has multiple fire stories, because we already know that courthouse number 3 built in 1887, also burned down in 1930 from a fire. Oh, and remember when we were told that the clock tower was removed shortly after the building was done? Well, now we're being told that it was conveniently blown away in the wind. Come on, narrator, get your story straight. Oh, and just for fun, courthouse number 2 was $7,500. So courthouse number 4, just throw another 0 on the end of the same exact repeating number of 75. Unbelievable stuff. Between building projects that take less than a year, over and over, to the same names, and all of the old world buildings, somehow, randomly, without any backstory as to how it happened, going up in flames. Brick buildings, when we know that brick does not burn down from house fires. This is a lie and has been right in our faces, and all we had to do was look. It is incredible. Oh, and one more thing about these 2 Charles Page twins, just to end this episode with an eye-opener. And of course, I'll be back with much more very soon. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And I want to thank all the badge members and Patreons and subscribers.
On that note, I'm gonna probably get out of here too in a minute, but shit. Yeah. Actually, we're gonna listen to some more philosophy before I bounce though real quick. You know what I'm saying? Manly P. Hall wasn't done cooking up.
The sudden removal of responsibility, the sudden shift of the pattern,
but yeah, I'm about
may
to hop off
release a
though.
great deal of hysteria or tension. But during the need, we were strong as nature intended us to be. If our insight had been as great as our strength, we would not have had the shock reactions afterwards. It just meant that we were using natural resources to get through the emergency. But when it was past, we fell back again into our artificial attitudes, and these gave way and let us down. Acceptance, then, is actually not the individual who agrees with something he does not believe in.
He's too little.
Does not compromise in any way his own integrities. Acceptance is clear thinking and a quiet decision made within the self. We do not need to cooperate with anything that we believe to be wrong. On the other hand, in matters where our own judgment may be no better than anyone else's, there is no justification for a bitter outburst of resentment or antagonism. If the person refuses to be tempted into an unreasonable situation, he will not be forced to fight his way out of it. Acceptance, then, is evaluation. It is the proper weighing of situations. It is the effort to discover the true meaning and the real lesson which every incident has for us. It is the person becoming so deeply aware of the importance of principles involved that he is no longer aware of his own feelings primarily. He is only aware that he must sustain values, and that he sustains values with dignity and not with conflict. If we had strong people, we would have very much less of this outburst which we are suffering from today. Very largely, temperamentalism is a symbol of weakness.
No.
It is an individual who, falling into the water and not knowing how to swim, strikes out in every direction at once and sinks. Whereas if he was quiet, he would float, and might very well float up on the shore, simply carried by the tide itself. But if we thrash around in a situation, the chances are 10 to 1 we will drown. But we will not drown because of the sea, but because we did not know how to conduct ourselves in the emergency.